What if the real war is not where you expect it? Not in the trenches or along the map's blood-red lines, but in the quiet places, beneath bridges heavy with age, along lonely railway tracks stretching across endless plains, inside dimly lit control rooms, where few ever look and fewer still understand what's at stake. The headlines flash with images of tanks rolling through ruined towns and missiles streaking across blackened skies. But the real fight is older, quieter, and more decisive. Logistics decides who survives. This truth is not new. More than 100 years ago, during the First World War, armies learned, often through bitter defeat, that the side with the most shells, the most fuel, and the freshest men could outlast any opponent. It was true at the muddy battlefields of the Somme, and it remains true now, in Ukraine, where supply lines define the fate of nations. Russia's plan in Ukraine is not about crushing soldiers in open fields or overwhelming cities with sheer numbers. It is about choking the arteries, supply lines, railways, and bridges that act as the lifelines of the war machine. The weapons are not just brute force, but also precision, sabotage, and above all, patience. This is a war of attrition waged in the shadows, where every decision and every strike is carefully calculated. Ukraine's mighty rail network, a Soviet inheritance, stretches for more than 21,000 kilometers, weaving through cities, villages, forests, and fields. On maps, it looks like an indestructible web, but its power is also its greatest vulnerability. The entire system depends not on endless tracks, but on a few dozen vital stations, junctions and bridges, chokepoints that, if broken, can bring the whole network to a halt. Imagine this. Just 50 crucial sites, hidden in the sprawl, hold up the whole network. This number is not an exaggeration. Military analysts have repeatedly shown that in any large transport system, the majority of capacity depends on a handful of critical nodes. Destroy or disrupt these, and the logistical backbone snaps. These are not battlefields. They are invisible choke points. Hit them, and entire armies halt, just as the loss of the Remagen Bridge in the Second World War choked German reinforcements in the West. Modern victory is not won in muddy foxholes or by courage alone. It is forged by taking down capacity, methodically targeting the unseen gears that let armies move, fight, and survive. Today's war is fought by numbers, by networks, by the careful hands that shape the front from far behind it. The side that can paralyze the other's logistical flow gains a decisive advantage, often without firing a shot at the front lines. Miss this shift, and you miss the truth about who wins and why. Misreading this new battleground leads to disaster, not just for generals, but also for anyone invested in security, power, or influence. The lessons of history are littered with armies that marched bravely into defeat because they could not feed, fuel, or reinforce their troops in time. Let's pull back the curtain and see how wars are really waged now, not in heroic charges, but deep inside the machinery that keeps nations alive. To understand this transformation, we have to follow the steel veins of Ukraine and see how each targeted blow reshaped the conflict. The answers lie far from the headlines, buried in the network's hidden weak points, where a single failure can cascade into disaster. How can a nation's greatest strength also be the blade against its throat? Ukraine's railways, its industrial legacy, became both shield and exposed vein when war erupted. This paradox is not unique to Ukraine. In the Second World War, the Soviet Union's own vast railroad network was both its salvation and its vulnerability, as German saboteurs targeted key bridges and junctions to slow Red Army reinforcements. To see how modern war is fought in the shadows, we must trace these lines of steel. From the Soviet era, Ukraine inherited over 21,000 kilometers of track, a dense grid weaving factories, ports, and front lines into a single organism. Trains surged across the land, hauling fuel, ammunition, and troops at a pace that stunned old generals. On paper, this web promised resilience and reach, much as the American Transcontinental Railroad once promised to unite a nation across vast distances. Yet its very efficiency masked a fatal fragility. While thousands of kilometers sprawled across the steppe, the network's life pulsed through only a few dozen key nodes. Stations, bridges, switching yards, and electrical substations scattered like pressure points. Damage just a handful, and the consequences could ripple nationwide, toppling supply lines and choking reinforcements. It was a paradox. The more connected the system, the more catastrophic a single break. This principle has been demonstrated in other conflicts, such as when North Vietnamese forces targeted U.S. supply depots and bridges during the Vietnam War, showing that logistics, not firepower, can be the decisive factor. Russian commanders saw opportunity. Their analysts pored over maps and timetables, realizing they did not need to cripple every rail. Instead, they searched for the system's true Achilles heels, those rare nodes whose loss would cripple the whole. The question became not how many places to hit, but which very few to choose. This is reminiscent of the Allied bombing campaign in the Second World War, which shifted focus from factories to transportation hubs to paralyze the German war effort. To find answers, Russia launched a relentless intelligence offensive. Satellites swept overhead, snapping images of rail yards, bridges, and sidings every few hours. Electronic eavesdroppers intercepted encrypted railway chatter, dispatchers whispering about secret shipments, officers debating alternate routes. Most dangerous were the human sources, railway workers, local collaborators, and even unwitting civilians who passed along rumors and sightings. Each thread added to a growing tapestry of vulnerability. This multi-layered intelligence approach echoes Cold War spycraft, where every scrap of information was pieced together to uncover hidden weaknesses. All this raw data fed into a digital double of the Ukrainian rail network inside Russian war rooms. This was no static map. Instead, it was a living simulation, constantly updated with satellite snapshots, intercepted calls, and reports from the ground. Russian analysts could model every scenario. What if this bridge falls? How does a destroyed substation ripple through the next day's ammunition runs? Every node was ranked by its irreplaceability, its power to halt the flow if lost. The use of real-time simulations and digital twins represents a leap forward, similar to how modern corporations use supply chain management software to anticipate and avoid bottlenecks. Soon, attack dossiers emerged. Each contained precise coordinates, surveillance photos, defensive layouts, and even the recommended type of missile or drone. These targets were not chosen for their size or fame, but for their potential to shock the entire network. Each was a calculated move in a new kind of chess, with the stakes measured in battalions and days of resistance lost. In the Gulf War, coalition forces famously targeted Iraqi command and control nodes, demonstrating again the power of precision over mass destruction. The stakes could not have been higher. With only a handful of well-placed strikes, Russia could freeze Ukraine's war machine, cutting off ammunition, fuel, and reinforcements. Suddenly, the fate of an army depended not on heroic stands at the front, but on anonymous bridges and sidings, overlooked until disaster struck. History has seen similar moments, such as when the loss of the Falaise pocket in Normandy sealed the fate of German forces in the West. But knowing where to hit was only the beginning. Russia's true innovation, and the heart of this new warfare, was turning analysis into precise destruction, with high-tech weapons and synchronized assaults designed to break the enemy's backbone before the enemy could even react. This is a far cry from the massed artillery barrages of the past, representing a revolution in how wars are waged. Next, we unravel how Russia transformed this blueprint into action, deploying drones, missiles, and sabotage teams to strike with surgical precision. The battle for Ukraine's rails was about to become a contest of speed, secrecy, and technological supremacy. The introduction of loitering munitions, for example, allowed for real-time target identification and destruction, a tactic that would have been unthinkable in earlier conflicts. What if you could cut off an army's lifeblood with a scalpel instead of a sledgehammer? This is the new blueprint for warfare in Ukraine. Russia employs not brute force, but surgical precision, using drones, cruise missiles, ballistic and hypersonic weapons, each selected for its special purpose. The supply network itself has become the true battlefield, every weapon a tool to sever a crucial artery or node. This mirrors the Israeli approach in recent conflicts, where precision strikes have sought to minimize collateral damage while maximizing disruption. Attacks are meticulously staged. First come swarms of so-called kamikaze drones, sent to probe for air defenses, soaking up attention and exposing hidden gaps. Once those shields are strained, waves of missiles, some blazing fast and unstoppable, others ghosting in low and silent, are unleashed, aimed only at the most vital links. This multi-phased approach is reminiscent of the shock and awe campaigns, but with a focus on infrastructure rather than morale. Nowhere did this strategy hit harder than at Pavlograd. In less than 72 hours, a single strike on this rail hub rippled across the entire Ukrainian front. Trains came to a halt, fuel supplies vanished, ammunition and reinforcements never reached their destinations. The aftershock spread, paralyzing entire sectors within days, not weeks. This type of cascading failure has been observed in cyber attacks worldwide, where one breach can cripple entire systems. Bridge warfare became a science unto itself. Russian forces did not simply demolish bridges, they dismantled them methodically, using layered barrages. Drones or cheap loitering munitions would hit first, weakening structures. Then heavier missiles followed, targeting the damaged spans, repair crews, and even makeshift pontoon crossings. Across the Dnipro River, these attacks physically split Ukraine's supply lines east from west, cleaving logistics in two. Historical parallels abound. In the Korean War, UN forces repeatedly targeted bridges over the Yalu River to sever Chinese supply lines. Energy infrastructure was struck with equal precision. Traction substations feeding the country's electric trains became high-priority targets for small, inexpensive drones. Every successful hit forced more convoys onto slow, exposed roads, while repair teams worked under constant threat of new attacks. This forced adaptation is reminiscent of the German V-1 and V-2 rocket campaigns, which targeted British energy and transportation infrastructure in World War II. No restoration went unpunished. Satellites and drones tracked every move in real time. The moment a crew arrived to fix a bridge, substation, or railway switchyard, fresh salvos rained down. Every repair became a gamble with death, every fix a fleeting victory. This relentless targeting cycle mirrors the Allied bombing of German repair depots and oil refineries in 1944, where no repair was allowed to stand for long. This was more than a campaign of demolition. It was psychological warfare. Ukrainian engineers and soldiers found themselves in a relentless, unwinnable cycle. Each attempt to rebuild triggered a new attack, draining morale and exhausting resources. The very act of repair became a source of dread. This mirrors the experiences of Londoners during the Blitz, where constant bombardment wore down civilian resolve. Traditional heroics no longer mattered. No matter how bravely defenders fought or how quickly crews responded, paralysis spread. The very logistics that once sustained the front now threatened to unravel it, without a single decisive battle being fought. In the American Civil War, Sherman's march to the sea demonstrated the power of targeting infrastructure over direct confrontation. As Ukraine's supply network seized up, consequences rippled to the front lines and beyond, reshaping not just the fighting, but the future of warfare itself. The rules of engagement had changed. In this new war, the side that controlled the flow of supplies, and the ability to disrupt them, held the real power. The war did not collapse all at once. It faltered, quietly, as the flow of supplies slowed to a trickle. When the lifeline of support snapped, the fighting did not end with a bang, but with a suffocating silence. The silence that follows when fuel, shells, and hope run out. This echoes the fate of the German 6th Army at Stalingrad, cut off from resupply and slowly starved into surrender. Ukrainian artillery crews felt the pinch first. The daily rhythm of loading and firing was replaced by anxious rationing. Each round fired became a costly decision. The term artillery hunger swept the trenches as Ukrainian guns fell silent, forced to conserve what little remained. Meanwhile, Russian batteries unleashed far more shells, shifting the balance of firepower day by day. This phenomenon has historical precedent. During the siege of Leningrad, Soviet defenders struggled with ammunition shortages, while German artillery maintained relentless pressure. On the front lines, the impact was immediate and brutal. Tanks and armored trucks, starved for diesel, sat idle. Without a steady stream of fuel, ammunition, and reserves, Ukrainian units could not maneuver or reinforce. Planned counterattacks vanished. Positions that had held for weeks crumbled under pressure, not from overwhelming force, but from a slow suffocation. This is reminiscent of the Yom Kippur War, where supply shortages on both sides determined the tempo and outcome of battles. The cracks widened. Russian assault teams, sensing weakness, pushed deeper. No longer pinned down, they probed for gaps, exploited abandoned strongpoints, and advanced with growing confidence. Where logistics failed, the front line itself began to dissolve, territory slipping away, not to thunder, but to absence. Yet the Russian offensive was not limited to combat zones. Western aid, worth tens of billions in equipment and munitions, moved across Ukraine on a web of railways and roads. Russian high-tech strikes mapped this network, pinpointing key junctions, rail yards, bridges, sorting stations. With a handful of precision attacks, entire trainloads of Western support could be delayed, misdirected, or destroyed, turning massive investments into stranded cargo. This is not unlike the U-boat campaigns of the war at sea, where a few well-placed torpedoes could sink months of Allied production. The strategy escalated. Strikes targeted border crossings and tunnels, vital arteries for Ukraine's economy. Grain exports piled up in silos, unable to reach foreign buyers. Medicine, fuel, and other essentials joined the backlog, trapped behind collapsed bridges and burned-out depots. The blockade was total. Military and civilian lifelines choked alike. This mirrors the Allied blockade of Germany in World War I, which slowly strangled the German war effort by denying imports. Desperation forced adaptation. Ukrainian commanders shifted from rail to road, sending convoys crawling along dangerous highways. But trucks could not carry as much, nor move as fast. Each new route was a gamble. One drone or missile could erase weeks of effort and millions of dollars in aid. Every delivery became a race against time and targeting algorithms. The risks were immense, as seen in Afghanistan, where supply convoys through the Khyber Pass were routinely ambushed. Repair crews became the new frontline soldiers, patching rails and bridges under fire. The cycle was punishing. Each repair provoked another strike. Each rebuilt junction was soon shattered again. Costs soared. Some routes were simply abandoned, too dangerous or too damaged to reclaim. This echoes the fate of the Burma Road in World War II, which was constantly under threat from Japanese air and ground attacks. The most devastating blows were invisible. Ukraine's fighting strength, economic resilience, and diplomatic standing eroded slowly, not from defeat in pitched battle, but through systematic isolation. This was war by algorithm, attrition, and targeted paralysis. A single destroyed bridge could tilt the entire war's outcome more than a lost brigade. The lesson is clear. The most important victories are often the least visible. The stakes could not be higher. The old wisdom claimed that amateurs talk tactics while professionals focus on logistics. Ukraine's war rewrote that rule. Now, supremacy belongs to those who can dominate the invisible battlefield of supply lines. The fight for territory faded into a deeper contest, a struggle to control the arteries that keep nations alive. The world is watching, and the lesson is clear. Lose the logistical war, and you lose everything. Yet in this new age of warfare, victory is measured not by territory gained, but by the resilience of networks under attack. The future demands a new kind of readiness, one built for a world where every bridge, railway, and depot is a battlefield. This shift is already influencing military doctrine worldwide, with NATO exercises increasingly focused on protecting supply lines rather than just holding ground. What if wars are no longer won by tanks rolling across fields, but by silent blows against the veins of a nation? In today's conflicts, the true battlefield is hidden: railway junctions, power grids, data centers. Here, it is not about capturing ground, but about stalling the flow of fuel, ammunition, and information before a single soldier sees the enemy. In the 21st century, cyber attacks on infrastructure, such as the Stuxnet virus that crippled Iranian centrifuges, show how the definition of battlefield has changed fundamentally. This is warfare's sixth generation, where brains and bytes eclipse brute strength. The side that can cripple infrastructure with a few precise, well-timed strikes can paralyze armies, regardless of how many troops or armored vehicles they possess. One bridge, one substation, or a single key rail hub, taken out at the right moment, can upend months of planning and millions in investment. This is why advanced militaries are investing heavily in resilience, redundancy, and rapid repair capabilities. Integrated intelligence is the new secret weapon. Space-based eyes, electronic intercepts, and human informants create a living map of the enemy's beating heart. Now, the value lies not just in advanced munitions, but in having a real-time dynamic blueprint of the invisible network sustaining every frontline force. Commanders who can harness and act on this information will win the wars of tomorrow. Commanders with instant networked data decide who acts first, who targets best, and who adapts with lethal speed. In this world, the flow of supplies determines the outcome far more than static territorial lines. Sabotage a handful of bridges or substations, and you may trigger a domino collapse, crippling an entire campaign before outside aid can shift the balance. The lessons of the past are clear. Control the flow, and you control the fight. The lesson is stark. Logistics is no longer the quiet rear. It is the battlefield itself. Ignore this at your peril. Armies can be routed, not by defeat in open battle, but by strangulation far from the front. This logic extends well beyond war. Business leaders, policymakers, and cybersecurity experts face the same cold reality. Control the supply lines, the data routes, the power grids, and you control the future. The 2021 blockage of the Suez Canal by a single ship, the Ever Given, cost billions and highlighted how fragile global supply chains can be. Disruption rules. Clinging to old metrics, counting tanks, measuring territory, misses the real fight swirling in the shadows. To survive and win, you must build resilience, invest in adaptability, and master the technologies that define tomorrow's contests, whether in combat or commerce. This means training specialized repair teams, developing decentralized command structures, and investing in cyber defenses. Fail to see these signals, and you risk being blindsided, outmaneuvered, or quietly erased, regardless of your field. The stakes are now existential, in war, in business, and in government alike. The COVID-19 pandemic, for instance, showed how supply chain disruptions can bring entire economies to a standstill, proving that logistics is a matter of national security. But how exactly did these new tactics play out on the ground in Ukraine? The answer reveals just how swiftly the rules of conflict have changed. With each targeted strike on a bridge or rail junction, the nature of power shifted, a silent coup reshaping not just the Ukrainian battlefield, but the very logic of modern war. Who truly wins wars today? Not those with the largest armies or the most imposing tanks, but those who outthink and outmaneuver their enemies, strategists who wage war in the shadows. The real battlefield is now hidden, fought not in muddy trenches, but along the invisible circuits of national logistics. The Russian campaign in Ukraine has not only redrawn the front lines, but has exposed a new reality. Destroy the flow of supplies, and you can decide the outcome before a single shot is exchanged. Modern war is no longer measured by the bravery of infantry or the sheer number of armored vehicles. Instead, it is a contest over fuel lines, ammunition stockpiles, and the relentless movement of reinforcements. The true lifeblood of an army is circulation, and those who can sever these arteries hold the fate of entire nations in their grasp. Just as the Roman Empire rose and fell on the strength of its roads and supply chains, today's powers will rise or fall on their logistical prowess. Victory today is engineered with satellite surveillance, encrypted commands, and algorithms that can predict collapse before leaders even sense danger. The most devastating strikes are not those that look dramatic on the evening news, but those that quietly cripple a few key bridges or rail hubs, bringing the machinery of war to a halt. In the information age, the most powerful weapon is knowledge, knowing what to hit, when to hit, and how to keep the enemy guessing. Clinging to old myths, heroic charges, thunderous artillery duels, means missing the transformation already underway. Political and military leaders who ignore this shift will find themselves trapped, fighting obsolete battles while the future slips away. The story of the Maginot Line, bypassed by German panzer divisions in 1940, is a cautionary tale for those who prepare for yesterday's wars. So, what is real power in this new age? It is the silent, methodical destruction of an enemy's ability to fight at all. The future belongs to those who master logistical warfare, and those who fail to adapt risk losing far more than just a battle. The world has changed. The battlefield is everywhere, and nowhere. The side that controls the flow, controls the fight. To prepare for this new era, nations and organizations must invest in resilient infrastructure, flexible logistics, and rapid repair forces. They must train personnel to operate in contested environments, develop backup networks, and use artificial intelligence to predict vulnerabilities before adversaries can exploit them. In a world where a handful of targeted strikes can unravel years of preparation, readiness is measured not by numbers alone, but by the ability to adapt, endure, and overcome. The curtain falls on the old ways of war. The future is here, fought in the shadows, written in the language of logistics, and decided by the unseen hands that keep the world turning. Will you see the signals before it is too late?